Three, two, one.
You're now watching two old farts making noises.
Hey, welcome to the Remote Show with Michael Maturo.
How are you doing today?
All right, welcome to the Remote Show with, hello everybody, Michael Maturo, and I'm glad we have the old farts back with us.
Wow, look at that. We're back. It's making it sound like we were near death at some point. It's like they're back. It's like,
I've been near death quite a few times. Yeah.
Yes.
Like herpes. Everybody's
Like
best
herpes.
friend, bed bugs, herpes,
There you go. Very nice.
Yeah, well, so we're luckily back with topics about remote work. And this week's topic, last time we talked about suitability for large companies versus small companies and some of the differences there. And this time we're going to talk about actually some of the qualities that we've perceived are some of the qualities needed for people to succeed as a remote worker, because it's not for everybody. We talked about that last time too. But for the people it is for, it's actually very lucrative, very exciting, and works really well for the way that your work life, not balance, but your work life symbiosis actually works together. So we'll talk about that today with the two old farts.
Oh, you're so screwed. So first of all, I think that one of the most important things you need in a remote worker is they have to breathe. They have to be alive. I don't think dead people can do remote work.
Minimum.
Okay. Minimum standard. You got to be alive.
You got to be alive. You got to really be, and you got to really be alive. I mean, you got to be proactive. And one of the things that we were talking about is just being proactive, being somebody who's willing to go the extra step and think, all right, well, how can I, if I'm in a situation where, well, we've talked about this before too, is just pick up the phone. If there's some sort of conflict, if there's some sort of question, not just resorting to an email and sending it off into the ether, but actually picking up the phone and saying, hey, can you clarify this for me so we can actually work through it?
Yeah, but are you finding with your remote workers, whether they're US based or somewhere else based, are you finding that a lot of them or a percentage of them are proactive, or are you finding them they're all 14-year-olds? And a 14-year-old when I use that term, is a 14-year-old or literal 14-year-old or someone that's between 14 and 114. Right. Are you finding that there's an age group that's afraid to pick up the phone because they don't want to get rejected because mommy told them they were special? Or do you find that they can pick up the actual telephone?
I mean, I've seen it. So I've worked remotely for 8 years, not as long as you, Stephen, but I've worked remotely for 8 years.
Thanks a lot.
In those 8 years, I have worked with a lot of people, and there is somewhat of it seems like the younger people tend to resort to just the pure digital communications. Right. But I've seen it across all the age groups where people just tend to want to hide behind the screen. And it just isn't good for anybody really when you do that, because you're creating an artificial distance that's not necessary when you can just answer a question 2 minutes or a minute on the phone instead of 5 or 10 minutes just trying to get it down on an email or a Slack message or an instant message.
Right. I sit on a board that we're all remote. We've got guys in France, we've got guys in America, guys in Asia, and I'll know that one guy likes to literally write a book. And then he'll go, what are everyone's thoughts? And what we do instead of writing a book back is it's all what's up, right? We leave a voicemail on what's up. And it's like, here's our thoughts. And then this way, I may leave a minute to a 2-minute message, but it beats me writing a 15-page thing on what's up. And it's getting the same thing across. And I understand why he's writing it, because he wants to go back to be able to refer it. But when he says, what do we think? Some guys started to write. I'm like, why are we writing a book back? No one's going to read it, but they will spend a minute to 2 to listen to your voicemail.
Yeah.
So even that's, I find to be practical.
Do you think it's a good halfway house then, Stephen? Because it's you're sort of picking up the phone, aren't you? You're doing something audio with it.
The issue with and to Michael's point, I'm being proactive. I cannot call all 7 guys and say, here's what I think. I mean, we could do a Zoom call, but then we'd be doing Zoom calls every 15 minutes, right? But if I do it that way, at least if it's all of us, I go, here's what I think of your points. I disagree with this one. Maybe we can change it. Oh, okay. Instead of right, because nothing really gets accomplished. You just go back and forth. And I think people forget we're not in the 1800s anymore, the 1700s or the 1300s when David and I, when David was born and I was here when the earth cooled. But I mean, you used to write a letter, wait 6 months to get the response. Here, everything is instantaneous. So if I can leave you a voicemail on WhatsApp or on your text, so you can go, oh, I understand now. A lot easier in cutting through all the BS and whatnot. And I think, like I said, I think a lot of it is because everyone's mommy told them they were special and they're not. And I think that they do the texting or the WhatsApping because they don't want to get rejected. Because if you reject me in writing, it's not as bad as if you reject me verbally, I guess. I think at a certain age, you get to the point where like, who gives a fuck? Like, okay, you don't like my idea. I'm going to survive.
Yeah.
And the whole thing as an idea is for me to take this idea and grow the idea into something better or enhance it or say, no, but can we try this or take part of it? And I think the younger generation, and like I said, the 14-year-old group, I don't think they understand that. And I think a lot of older people are getting into the we have to text, I don't want to be offended thing. And I'm like, screw that. Be offended. It's okay to say something.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing though, Steve, because I mean I found out with my own kids that I do something and it was in capitals, just because I've got like two fat thumbs. And then they say, why are you shouting at me?
Yeah. I never knew that.
Well, I didn't know,
Yeah.
So I mean, if I'm shouting at you or Michael now, you're going to hear it. If I'm on the phone and shouting, you're going to hear it. So are my neighbors, as they have. But when I'm sort of doing that texting, which is, and I was like, and he said, well, why are you shouting? So I'm not shouting. I'm just merely trying to communicate. So, is that the right way to go as well? Just to text everything and still get crapped upon for not doing that right? I mean,
you can't win, baby. You can't win.
Yeah.
No,
but is that an age thing, or do they bitch about it themselves to each other? I don't know.
There is an art to it. You're right about that. I mean, there's an art to figuring out what is the right mode of communication at what time. Because you're right. Sometimes you do want things in writing, and you want it to be able to refer back to it. So you'll write the long email, or you'll write even a document that people can refer to. Amazon is famous for that, writing those briefs that they need to review before meetings. But then you need to understand that sometimes you might want to leave the voice message so that multiple people can hear your voice, and so you can hear your intonation and hear the way that you're communicating the idea. And sometimes you'll just want to get I tend to think if it's a quick yes or no, or just a confirmation or sending some information quickly, then you can just send a Slack message or an instant message and just write it down in text. But as soon as you get into more complex thoughts, it's best to do the voice message or pick up the phone if you're doing it one-on-one, and just find a way to figure out. You got to think, what's the best mode of communication, instead of just assuming that there's only one way to do it.
Right. But I think that's the problem, right?
To that Amazon thing, because I'm a bit slow on the uptake.
Oh yeah.
That's a new. I hadn't heard that before. Maybe some of the other listeners and viewers haven't heard of it either.
Yeah, that was a big thing that people are always trying to figure out. What is Amazon's secret to success? And one of the things that was brought up is that in the very early days until today, Jeff Bezos would ask for whoever's running a meeting to put together a brief about what that meeting is about, so that you would have to review it and understand the topic of the meeting before you even went into it. So it could be a page, it could be multiple pages, but you have to read it before you go into the meeting so that everybody's level set, so that meetings aren't just talking to people about an idea, but you're actually discussing whatever that idea is. And so it's the Amazon brief, and it's kind of required before most meetings at Amazon.
I thought it was that they weren't allowed to pee. I thought that was how Amazon became successful, and using Bangladesh children for the sweatshop. I thought those were the two keys for
allegedly.
I thought that was allegedly. Yes, I'm sorry. No, the pee thing I know is I've seen enough stories. That's a known fact that if you work in the warehouse or drive a thing, like you literally, they carry pee jars with them because they can't pee because they'll go against their metric, and if it goes against the wrong metric, they can get fired. It's a whole thing. It's kind of stupid, but
It's
You know.
an intense thing. That's
So what about you then, Stephen? Because you've told us before you've been you're still active on a lot of boards.
That's it. Yeah.
Are you a note taker? Do you take your notes into the meeting, or do you wing it? Or because I know you have an immense capacity to remember stuff like that, and that is a compliment. I know you don't get many from me, so take it.
I know.
But,
So, thank you. And your name is what again, please, so I can write it down? No, I take notes during. I used to forget the name of the show, which is pretty funny. But anyway, no, I have a notepad that's yay thick, and I've actually, Michael, looked at your Remarkable 2,
Yeah.
and now I saw Amazon has something called the Kindle something, so I'm vacillating between which two.
Yeah.
I'm actually vacillating which one to get, so I don't have to use paper. But anyway, to answer your question, I take copious notes. So if someone says, we had a meeting 2 years ago and someone said something yesterday. I was like, no. Through my papers. And I went, this is what we said. And I take notes on everything, even casual talking. I get a pen and I just like little notes. You never know. Something comes up. I take notes because I want to remember it and I want it there. So if someone says, no, that's not what was said, I'm going to like, yes. Or when you're speaking, I have an idea and I can write it down and not be rude and try to interrupt somebody. So I take notes going into a meeting, like our meeting yesterday. We kind of do the brief thing, but we were doing this before Amazon and Jeff Bezos was born, right? So you always go into a meeting with what it is. Now, if it's sometimes you just need to have a meeting just so everybody can air some bullshit. They don't need notes. But usually, like the meeting yesterday, it was 5 points, and every point had like 1 or 2, 3 little subs under it, and was like boom, 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 boom. 42 minutes and 30 seconds later, we were done saying goodbye, and everyone was happy. So we very much go into meetings with an agenda, just so it's where. And if at the very end, we'll say, is there anything else? And if anybody wants to touch on something, we can. But pretty much, it's really we touch on what's important.
Covered. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that's the discipline.
Michael, can I just ask one question that adds on to what Stephen was saying? And because a lot of remote workers, are there conversations recorded? As you very often hear that, for what is it, for review or?
That's crap.
Yeah, I mean,
it's very common in the sales scenario in the software sales world, at least for the world that I've worked in. We are recording customer conversations with their permission, of course, so that we can refer to it after the fact. So not only are people, I mean, I take notes during the call, but not only are you doing that during the call, but then you can refer back to the call and speed through it and actually see who is talking at one point and review it for your own training purposes so you can improve your demonstrations, so you can improve your conversations. And people are, I haven't seen a customer say no to that. Maybe once I saw that happen, but most of the time people are very open to it because they know it's just so that we can improve, so we can make sure we get the right notes said, and so we can all service the customer better.
But I worked for an organization, and that was their Monday morning thing, was to play back all the things and just roast people. Honestly, I worked for them for about 6-7 months. Yeah. We had this thing every week, about everything had to be approved. I never met anybody, never spoke to anybody who came out of any of those meetings that felt happy.
Right.
Because if you're going to do it on a one-to-one, or there's somebody who's your mentor or somebody who's supposed to be training you, great. But to have it done in a Monday morning sales meeting about, listen to this one, this was the best one this week, and this was the crap one this week, and to get roasted in front of all your colleagues, not pleasant. It's supposed to motivate you. Didn't motivate me, made me feel quite ill, to be honest.
Yeah,
if you're listening, you know who I am, guys. I don't give a fuck about that either.
I think everybody's company culture is a little different. Like in our company culture, when I had to go like to an office and we would have a team meeting and if we played a video or if we played a recording of something, we would let the people know why we're doing it, and then it would be a learning thing. Some of them were funny, and even some of the customer service people would be like, this is hysterical. And we'd listen to it, but like, oh, we got to play this. And everybody would laugh. And if somebody did something inherently wrong, we would not like go in front of 50 people and say, listen, this guy's an idiot. We would literally say, okay, we need to train you better and retrain. Yeah. So, and I think that's the other thing with the remote work, right? A lot of customer service people now are remote work. Like this, they don't really go to an office and they don't have 50 people.
That's right.
And it's sort of like when they run into a problem or they run into a customer, it's like, well, can you do this? You're like, well, no. Can I speak to a supervisor? And they go, I'll transfer you. 90% of the time they transfer them to dial tone. And I think companies need to teach their customer service people or whoever they're going to, or in remote work in general, they need to teach, if you're a remote worker and a customer says something and you don't understand it, you need to be able to get back to them.
That's
And I
right.
think a lot of them just blow them off. And I think to succeed in a remote work, you would still need to be able to succeed in the real world. You need to be able to succeed in an office. You also need to be a team player. Even though you're working by yourself,
That's right.
without any of that, I don't think you're going to be a good remote worker, because when a customer gets annoyed with you, you're going to be like, oh, I'll just flip you off into wherever. Well, that doesn't help you, and it certainly doesn't help your company.
That's right.
So I think you really need to teach remote workers.
But
Listen.
Stephen, where does that feedback come from? Though, how would I'm I'm a brand new remote worker.
Well,
How am I going to be supported in the ideal environment? The environment.
Well, Michael, ask Michael. So, Michael, how are your remote workers supported? Like, if David and I started with your company as remote customer service or remote workers, every time we're on a call, does a supervisor just say in, like, California listening to us here in New York, or how does that work then? How do they train their people?
Let's think about some of the entry level positions too. So some of those positions might be in sales, might be in marketing, or in the customer facing world. It could be customer support or customer success. So trying to help the customer be better using your product, or customer support, just helping them to problem solve. And in any of those cases, the ideal scenario is you have somebody shadowing you on the call itself. So you can do that pretty easily now with remote tech. You can bring somebody else on the call and just say they're here as a support, or however you want to couch it. And then you can also have the recording reviewed after the fact. So again, you're having your manager. This is what I do I manage a sales engineer, a solutions engineer out of India. And so I'll review his calls, and I'll shadow him on early calls just to see how things are going once in a while. And then at some point you can trust that they're going to be okay. And then you review it less periodically, but still periodically. So you've got that. Because of the technology, we're very fortunate to have that ability to review things after the fact, and also jump in live and just be there as support.
Okay. But I mean, so when you interview someone then for remote work, so they're going to be successful, what are you looking for? Or what are because the show's about, you want to be successful as a remote worker. So other than they have to breathe, and they have to be able to think, like, what's some qualities that when you talk to someone, you're like, this guy or girl, or whatever the proper pronoun or noun or verb or adjective is this week, what do you look for? What are like the 5 things you need from that person that you look at them and go, they'll be okay?
Well, a big one is that self-discipline, is the ability to take up the torch and to be disciplined in the way that you approach your work. So telling a story about how, for example, somebody would maybe take up a project and take it from start to finish in their own way. If they're in sales or marketing, especially, you want to know that they're disciplined enough to take the torch and run with it. And that kind of self-discipline, meaning that how much guidance and how much managing do they actually need? Because if they need a whole lot, you're going to need to adapt to that. If there's somebody who can be not just proactive, but also disciplined in their work, then you need less of that. I also like to ask about activities that they volunteered for in the company. If it's a startup, because I've generally worked for startups, volunteer what activities or what other projects outside of, maybe they're slightly outside of their job description, maybe related to their job, have they volunteered for in the companies. For example, we needed in one of the companies I was at, they needed support. They needed some extra help in the customer support department. And so I rose my hand and picked up some of the tickets so that we could get through some of these tickets faster, because I was customer facing anyway. I knew the product, I knew how to troubleshoot it. So I helped when the need arose.
So you're looking for initiative. You're looking for someone that'll take the initiative and not be also told what to do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Someone says, think out of the box. Hey, I need to step up.
Yeah, taking the initiative is definitely a good one there. That's a good one.
But that takes a long time to evaluate remotely, doesn't it? because if you're not very good at it, I mean, where does the point come where somebody says, here and no further?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean, if you're working in a busy store or in a busy warehouse or in an office where you can physically see stuff being stacked on up on your desk, or boxes that haven't been moved, or clients that haven't been approached when they come into the store, that's slightly different when you're working remotely. You also don't. I mean, are they aware right from the get go? This is the amount of calls that you may be taking in a certain work day or in certain periods, because that could be a shock as well.
Yeah, I mean, you really it actually pays. So for the people listening to this show, it actually pays to explore and find out the expectations that are on you during the interview process. And we do give tips on how to interview well. And part of that is asking the right questions about what's expected, because you really want to make sure that it's a fit culturally and a fit work-wise professionally. That fit, as I'm sure you know, Stephen, that fit is so important, because it's some places are just not suited for certain people, and certain people are not suited for certain places, and it's just the way it is. But if you set those expectations up front, which is what I try to do when I'm hiring somebody, and I'm sure other people are doing the same, is just setting the expectation of what level of work is required, what kind of communication, what work you're going to do, and how you're expected to do it. Those are questions that need to be asked and need to be discussed early on.
Right. Well, no, I mean, and I think now that we're the pussification of the globe, where everybody's so sensitive, I think it's hard when you go into a place because everybody's trying not to hurt someone's feelings. And I think people just need to be people. And if you hurt someone's feelings, it's okay. Once again, it goes back to, just because your mommy told you were special and you got a trophy for coming in 300th, you're not. And this is now the real world, where there's money involved and there's this involved and there's whatever. And I think when we hire people, I'm very blunt, and because you both know me, so you know that I don't really mix my words, and I don't really care if you're offended. But to me, it's this is what we do. This is what we expect. We take nothing less. If you do less, we get rid of you.
Right.
And people
I think it's interesting, Steve, because you said that on many occasions, and I think for people who maybe watching this remote show for the first time, as much as you say it as it is, it doesn't come, in my experience of working with you now for nearly a year, it doesn't come from a bad place. It comes from a place where people, know exactly where they're at, and maybe we are. There is a generation of people who are a bit airy-fairy in their heads, or gone with the fairies, as my father used to say.
Sure.
So that so it sort of rolls over them and think, oh my God, what's happening to me? But like I say, I don't think it necessarily comes from a bad place.
Well, to Michael's point, when you hire someone, you have to tell them what you expect. And I think people today are afraid to tell them that. I'm not sure why, but I mean, I want you to know that I expect you.
Well, litigation maybe in the US.
I mean,
it's a
well, yes and
litigation.
no, but I mean, if I tell you what I expect of you, and it's in your job description, and you sign off on it, and then I expect that of you, you can't come back to me and tell me I didn't know, or this other ridiculous happy, you know what? And I think we're litigious. The whole planet's litigious. And, every now and then an employee, I'm going to sue. And I'm like, please feel free. Because we got 50 attorneys that are on retainer. All they do is watch porn and jerk off all day. They would love to tear you apart, and your attorneys, and get more money from you. And that usually people don't really sue. But I mean, we also put them through sexual harassment classes, and they're all upset because none of them have been sexually harassed. So I think these classes are a waste. We've put them through training. I mean, we make sure that they understand their job, whether they're remote or they're in front of somebody. So there's not an opportunity for them to fail. And Michael and I have talked about this. If I hire you, I'm not hiring you to fail. I'm hiring you to succeed, because if you succeed, then everyone else succeeds, which means the company succeeds. And I think that's not the mindset anymore. I think the mindset is, I have to do good. I don't care about anybody else. No, you're a team. Like one company that we own, the team
Well,
bonus based on all of their performance, not one person. Like one person does great and they all suck cock. Okay, there's 10 of you. The 9 sucking cock still get the bonus. So they all work together because they all want a bigger bonus, not one person. So I think that's part of with remote work because you don't get to see your teammates.
right.
I know during the pandemic, one of my buddies who worked at a bank, every Friday afternoon they had cocktail hour. Like they would get together and have cocktails on Zoom together and smoke
Yep.
cigars together. You have to build a team. You have to build a community or a family as a remote worker. If not, if you feel you're isolated on an island and you're just putting in your 8 hours, get the F out after 8 hours, you're not going to be
Well, we've talked
anything.
about that. That's why you
Yeah.
have to do more in the remote space. And for the people who want to get into remote work, if you can show that you have initiative for yourself as an individual contributor, but you also take initiative as part of a team, that's going to make you even more attractive as a candidate, because you're showing that you're taking initiative, you're being proactive, you're a good communicator, you care about how you look and feel on the camera. And all of those qualities are going to be ways to get an advantage as a remote worker. And it comes across from day one, the way that you communicate on emails, the way you communicate on video, the way you communicate and your follow-up after an interview or after a communication with a recruiter or a hiring manager. So yeah, there are a lot of different qualities. There's actually on the Bendicoot website, bendicoot.com, we actually put together a quiz to help people gauge whether they are suited for a tech role. And it kind of sorts people into a few groups to say, how suited are you for a job in remote tech? So I encourage people to go ahead and take the quiz. It's a short one, but it's a good one, and it just gives you an idea as to how advanced you are in the remote tech space, and gives you ideas as to where you can actually enhance your standing as a candidate, what part you should start at, basically.
Cool. Well, the good thing is down below is like David likes me to point out. Down there somewhere is all the information for Michael's company. And if you mention 2 old farts, he'll give you 10% off.
You get the 10% off.
You get 10% off. So that's a beauty. So, and this is, I put a close up because everyone can see us.
Do you think, Michael, that remote workers are at the bottom of the pyramid? That is like really easy. We're not going to have anybody in the office. We'll do it all remotely because it seems to be easier and cheaper to hire and fire. Or do you think there really is a class of workers who always work remotely that bring great value? I mean, people are very professional.
Yeah, there's a huge initiative out there of people there's a huge community, first of all, of people who are just remote workers, of purely remote workers. There's a difference between remote workers who work from home and remote workers who work nomadically and travel around the world. But roughly, there's a community of remote workers who do trade tips and tricks and ideas of how to do it, how to perform well. And I do think that you could view remote workers as a different class of worker, but actually, when you look at remote workers as a class, it just means that they have to almost prove themselves more, and that makes them, for the successful remote workers, makes them even in a way could be just as valuable or even more valuable than somebody who's in the office. I don't think it's really a comparison of who's in the office and who's remote. I think it's just a different type of company culture that really dictates the success or not of a remote worker. And I think as we incorporate more people who are remote workers into our general hybrid, there's a lot of hybrid companies out there now. They're not purely remote work companies, but hybrid companies where some are in office and some are remote. There's a lot of advantages to people who are successful as remote workers. And part of that is the flexibility. Part of that is their initiative. Part of that is their discipline. And in some cases, they're able to get more work done than maybe somebody who's in the office and gets easily distracted, if that's the case for some people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And David, I mean, you did a lot of telework, right? So you know a little bit about the qualities required for a remote worker. I mean, have we covered ones that you've seen in your lifetime? I mean, with the initiative, to being proactive, being self-disciplined, teamwork attitude or a team attitude?
No, for me, I think obviously this is something we can come back to on a later day on another show. But I touched upon it, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Just the honesty of the HR department when they take you on in the first place.
Yeah.
And that really, it's lazy. They are lazy people, a lot of them. Yeah, it's a job function, read it, get on with it. But it can absolutely destroy you. It can destroy you because a lot of these people it's their first step up, their first job, their first opportunity.
That's right.
And you can get absolutely, destroyed, ripped mentally, doing telesales. It's a dangerous business to be in. And the people that are very successful of it, can make a lot of money without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of collateral damage.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's something we can touch upon on another show.
Yeah, the next show, what I wanted to talk about was actually we can talk about the different roles that tech companies tend to have, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into each of these roles because then the people watching the show could then get an idea as to where they best fit, and it'll be a preview of the Choose Your Own Adventure course. Just like that book where you would choose your own adventure, you'd follow the books. Well, I put together and we'll launch the course on how to choose your adventure, choose where you would want to be in a tech company. And it covers things like the operations side, like HR and finance, entry-level positions, then goes into sales and marketing. And then you look at the customer-facing positions like customer success, customer support, and that sort of, and even training and development as an operations role too. So there are a lot of roles that we could talk about as in terms of a good stepping stone into the remote tech world, because there's still a lot of opportunity out there, and I want to make sure people get connected to it.
So is the site up and running now and the course is available for people, or are you launching it January 1st? Since today is the 30th of December.
Is the 30th, that's right. So
and it's the last remote show of the year, and then he'll be back next year. As David likes to say, season 2. But yes, so will there be a whatchamacallit? Will there be is the course ready to go for everybody, or is it launching live January 1st?
The course will launch soon. I don't have the launch date yet, but it's because we wanted to get it up January 1st, but there's a lot of, there actually took longer to record these things than I anticipated. So I'll admit to that. But
and then, so if they go to the website now, what will I find?
They're going to see the information that about the course itself. They'll see course outlines. But they won't see the actual full course. They'll see the quiz. They'll see the newsletter. They can sign up for the newsletter, which actually gives you, over a period of time, it gives you tips and tricks that are related to remote work. So there's some content there already, but the courses themselves will be launching soon.
Very cool. All right. So, and remember, when they launch the course, if you told them you saw it on TOF, that you will get a 10% discount.
That's right.
And then this way, Michael will be all excited, and he can, where he lives in upstate New York, feed the gerbil that keeps the generator running. So
that's right.
The little wheel that goes like that.
That's right.
So it'll be very nice. Very cool.
Well, this is great, guys. So I think we're ready to go.
I think we're getting there.
All right.
Stay on when we're done there, Michael.
All right, you got it.
This is the very cool part of the show. This is the ending, and the best part is you can talk right up until the rock and roll starts.
Okay. There's the rock and roll.
So, and next week we're going to discuss what Michael said was the other stuff. So that'll be very cool.
Oh yeah, we'll cover all the entry level positions in remote work.
Very cool. Very, very cool. And everybody have a happy and healthy New Year if you're listening to this or watching it.
Yeah. Happy New Year.
So here we go. This is where we have to be quiet now.
Well, sadly, this is the end of today's show. A really big thank you to everyone who contributed today to the show. And of course, thank you to my co-host, Stephen Oldfart. I'm David Oldfart. Don't forget, subscribe to the show and get all the latest updates from Two Old Farts Making Noises.